Alright, guys, so by now, everyone knows the world is shifting away from the reserve currency, and there are many reasons to do so. There's the mountain of US debt that can never be repaid, the endless deficit spending that's just making things worse as well, and of course, the brutal financial sanctions. If you are countries like Russia, China, or Iran, there's simply no choice but to de dollarize, and in doing so, you'll reshape global trade. And that in turn allows more countries to move away from the current financial system.
How have sanctions, do you think, changed the dollar's place in the world?
To use the dollar as a tool of foreign policy struggle is one of the biggest strategic mistakes made by the US political leadership. But the fact that the United States applies restrictive measures to certain countries, such as placing restrictions on transactions, freezing assets, etc., causes grave concern and sends a signal to the whole world. Do you even realize what is going on or not? Does anyone in the United States realize this? What are you doing? You are cutting yourself off.
The issue here is US foreign policy. You might be a friend today, but you might be America's adversary tomorrow. Even allies like Germany aren't completely immune. Just 2 weeks back, Yellen gave their banks a threat: comply with sanctions against Russia or potentially get sanctioned yourself. If you don't behave, we might just cut away your access to dollars. And this is one big terrifying warning. Getting cut away would wreck both the banks and the German economy. Russia's the big target today, but seeing how things are evolving, China isn't too far off from getting punished as well. Blinken, Sullivan, and Yellen, they have all issued threats to Chinese banks. And if you're one of China's biggest trading partner, it's time to prepare for the unthinkable. What if China gets sanctioned? How do I continue trading with them? And that's why we have this shocking update. Saudi Arabia has officially joined the digital currency system led by China and the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS. With the Saudis joining mBridge, the project has reached the minimum viable product stage. In other words, this platform will be launching very soon. It will be fully operational. It's important we look at the participants here. They are the central banks of China, Hong Kong, Thailand, the UAE, and now Saudi Arabia. This is basically an anti-dollar currency system led by China. The Federal Reserve isn't invited and the ECB isn't on board either. It's an alternative system for countries to conduct cross-border transactions, trade outside of the West. And this gives countries the ability to bypass Western banks to send money around the world. If the US decides to impose sanctions, you can ditch SWIFT and use mBridge instead. Now, Saudi Arabia is the second largest oil supplier to China. We all know that. The future of oil demand will be centered around Asia, especially those in BRICS. Since 2013, the Saudis have been selling the majority of their oil to the Asians. They accounted for 70% of Saudi exports last year. Conversely, the West buys only 3% of Saudi Arabia's volumes. This is a weird situation where the smallest customer somehow controls whether you can buy or sell to your biggest market. It's hilarious and it doesn't make sense. And that's why MBS is exploring transacting in currencies outside the Western financial system. Riyadh wants to build alternatives because a conflict is likely coming. Blinken made this abundantly clear during his trip to Beijing.
Russia would struggle to sustain its assault on Ukraine without China's support. In my meetings with NATO allies earlier this month and with our G7 partners just last week, I heard that same message. Fueling Russia's defense industrial base not only threatens Ukrainian security, it threatens European security. Beijing cannot achieve better relations with Europe while supporting the greatest threat to European security since the end of the Cold War. As we've told China for some time, ensuring transatlantic security is a core U.S. interest. In our discussions today, I made clear that if China does not address this problem, we will.
If China or Asia gets sanctioned by the US, trade could grind to a halt, and this will destroy the Saudi economy because shipments priced in dollars can't get paid. China could get kicked out of SWIFT as well. What Saudi Arabia needs is a platform to start transacting outside of this Western architecture. Whether the trade is done in US dollars or the Chinese yuan, it doesn't matter for now. The money simply has to keep flowing. Saudi Arabia joining mBridge is a really big game changer. there will be a scaling up of commodity trade on a platform outside of US dollars. And more importantly, the mBridge transactions can use the code China's digital yuan is built on. And this would mean total secrecy when trading on the platform. It will just be a private ledger that is hidden from the Federal Reserve. Janet Yellen or Jerome Powell won't be able to track who sold what or who bought what. And for the US, it will be one gigantic black box. They will have to track every single ship leaving Saudi Arabia. And even if they figure out the buyer, there's nothing they can do to stop the transactions. And that's the power of the blockchain. Trade and settlement are done peer to peer. The Saudi central bank to the People's Bank of China directly. There can be no interference possible unless there's some sort of espionage involved. And as you can see, the transactions between central banks will be done entirely using digital tokens. This will be done in digital currencies, in the yuan, in the reals, central bank to central bank. Trade will be totally confidential. Thailand, for one, is embracing the mBridge project. And as we all know, Thailand is looking to join BRICS as well. There can be no coincidences here. According to them, mBridge can reduce cross-border transfer times from as many as 5 days to just several seconds. And this is critical because you can get near instant settlements without the need for a US entity. Whether it's the weekend, a holiday, or midnight in New York City, the transactions will still continue. Without SWIFT or US bank, life will still go on. Countries can still buy and sell stuff amongst themselves. The total amount of goods traded between the participants is nearly $600 billion strong. And with Saudi Arabia's entry, this would easily reach a potential of $1 trillion. And this opens up terrifying possibilities for de-dollarization. Good news for the global south, bad news for the Western powers. And those are just the practical advantages of the digital system. Using this, China can push the world towards ditching the dollar as well. Now, back in November, China and Saudi Arabia signed a currency swap line worth 50 billion yuan or 26 billion reals. In context, that's around 7 billion US dollars. The agreement allows Saudi Arabia to access the Chinese yuan for their imports by exchanging their currency, the reals, for them. There isn't any need to use the reserve currency for trade with China. The mBridge system allows China to internationalize the yuan even further. They can do it under the nose of the US in total secrecy, and countries will happily jump on board, especially during a currency crisis. Instead of selling dollars in the open market to protect their currency, countries can simply acquire yuan to fund their imports. In essence, China can issue emergency swap lines instantly. There won't be a need to sign any agreement or alert Janet Yellen to any new swap lines. Everything will be clandestine, and that's how big of a threat this mBridge system is to the dollar. Since the Ukraine conflict started, countries have been tapping more and more on China's swap line. It has doubled easily from 60 to 120 billion yuan. It's probably much higher today. Imagine the growth when countries can gain access in secret, exchanging local currencies for yuan to import EVs or even buy commodities from Russia. This use could double or triple again very easily. Central banks can sanction-proof themselves by reducing dependency on the dollar, and they can do it without Janet Yellen even knowing. For the G7, the news keeps getting worse. We have another bombshell that's just as important. Turkey is growing closer and closer to global south, and their foreign minister made a shocking announcement. Turkey wants to join BRICS. Russia is welcoming their interests, and this will be on the agenda of the coming summit in October. This is yet another clear sign that countries, even NATO allies, are trying to figure out ways to hedge their bets. They can see the writing on the wall. There's the eventual default of the dollar, and even before that, Turkey might be a victim of US sanctions. It's not impossible considering the business Turkey is doing with Russia today, and it's really big business. Turkey is the largest buyer of Russian oil products. This includes diesel, gasoline, and jet fuel. They account for 18% of market demand, and that's a scary amount of trade going on. If the West somehow decides enough is enough, Turkish banks and companies could get cut away from SWIFT, or their dollar holdings could get frozen. Either way, this could spark a bigger currency crisis for them. Turning to BRICS is simply an existential move. The majority of their imports comes from Moscow and Beijing. In fact, Russia is their biggest trading partner today. Turkey's supply of commodities and finished goods comes from the global south, from BRICS. So it makes absolute sense to join the bloc and to trade using local currencies. And this is chipping away at the dollar's dominance once again. As it stands, Turkey has an urgent inflation crisis. Their CPI is about to hit 75%, an increase from the previous month's reading. Obviously, this isn't good. This makes Erdogan very motivated to find a way to fund his imports. Turkey's entry into BRICS could mean quite a few things. The most impactful for them would be a bigger currency swap line with China, exchanging lira for the more valuable yuan to buy Chinese imports. And this would definitely help ease inflationary pressures. Good news for Turkey and for BRICS, especially China. The yuan becomes more of an international trading currency. Just last year, Turkey's central bank confirmed their swap agreement with China has increased by another 23 billion yuan. Joining BRICS would definitely help Erdogan increase this line of credit. And with the mBridge we talked about earlier, a lot of non-dollar transactions will be done in secret. The global south, especially Russia and China, is basically reshaping global trade, and two things are happening simultaneously. A new financial system is being built, and that's where the digital yuan and the mBridge blockchains come into play. It's all about making transactions away from SWIFT, which is a Western platform. The desire to sanction proof bilateral trade between countries is really strong. Secondly, de-dollarization is also accelerating. Turkey joining BRICS and China giving swap lines, it's all connected. The end goal, of course, is to chip away further at the reserve currency. It's going to be a slow grind that will take quite a while, but it's happening. The dollar might be the top dog today, but the momentum is suddenly shifting, and it's shifting fast. And when dollar primacy starts to break, this won't be good for the US economy either. But as always, let me know what you think. Will more countries join China's digital currency system? And who else wants to join BRICS? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.